Hello, welcome back to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm Reverend Tomas. And well, we're at a really interesting juncture here in our study of A Course in Miracles. We've arrived at a section that is very interesting. It's called the clarification of terms. Now, in sequential order, it follows the manual for teachers, yet it doesn't mean that this has to go last in anyone's study. You could open up the book to this and learn quite a great deal from this short section alone. So what it involves is some explanation of some of the terminology and ideas that are prevalent here in A Course in Miracles. Very handy indeed. Let's start with some important considerations here in the introduction. And Jesus starts right out just saying to us that this is not a course in philosophical speculation, nor is it concerned with precise terminology. Okay, that's sentence one. In other words, this is not a theological debate. Thank God. That's the last thing the world needs, isn't it? Is more theological discussion and debate round and round. Good luck attempting to convince somebody that your way is better, that your building is better than their building, and that they call the same God that you pray to and believe in by a different name in a different language. How do you say God in Arabic? Exactly. See where I'm going with this? Good luck trying to convince somebody that your way is right and they're wrong. What is this but a delay tactic? You see, you set up an ego-clinging dualistic situation just by engaging in the debate. It occupies your mind and takes you away from the experience of oneness with God at which this course aims. It's referred to here as the atonement, which is the correction of perception. Now, from that correction of perception, seeing things as they are, not as we falsely want them to be, but as they truly are. From that, we attain something that is referred to in the Course as the real world. And at that point, God takes the final step himself. We're awakened, we're absorbed into God, so to speak. As a matter of speaking, we've never left, by the way. But we awaken to this, and God takes the final step himself once we have no attack thoughts in our mind, right? Once we have achieved the atonement, we've accepted it wholly, and we've come to experience it. Atonement being the correction of perception, healing. It's the same thing. This is not about who's right or wrong. This is not about what somebody calls God on the other side of the world, which, by the way, originated in a very different part of the world, but not so different. What world, right? Right. Anything that takes us away and draws us away from the experience of our oneness is a delay. It's unnecessary. And at best, you just waste time on that. At worst, you have global warfare. Really. Three major monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, believe in the same God. So you might rightly ask, why endanger global security? It's a good question. Well, theological speculation, duality, us versus them, the ego at play. Yeah, that's just one example. It's a big one, but since we're talking about theological debate and discussion and how we can avoid it, it's a very relevant and pertinent example for us. Every single term is potentially controversial. And what we do in the world is we define and defend our personal territory accordingly. We say, okay, I go to this building is wrong, even though it may be much more ornately decorated and prettier than ours, but they go to their building on a different day. How can that be right? How can they be right? They can't be. Our building's right. Does it sound like a simplistic example? Well, this course itself is simple. It aims at atonement, the correction of perception, healing. That is its sole aim, nothing else. Theology, leave it to the side. I mean, if you want to engage in a theological sectarian debate with your neighbor, I'm not going to stop you from that. I am, however, going to invite you to not do that. You're just wasting time. It's pointless. It's quite literally pointless. A universal theology, as Jesus correctly tells us right here, is impossible. I mean, really, good luck trying to convince somebody that your way is better than theirs. You see all the ego traps just in that sentence alone. Better? Well, in truth, there is no better. There's just oneness. How can the Son of God be better than the Son of God if there's one Son of God? How can one approach to atonement, a universal experience? Healing is a universal experience. How can one approach be better than another? They're not better than. Consciousness is the domain of the ego, so study it if you want to study it. I'm here presenting a course in miracles, which is a way to save you a lot of time. In order to save this time, we must realize that atonement is the goal. Universal theology, impossible. Universal experience, possible and necessary. This universal experience is what we call awakening. It's what we call salvation or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. It's the universal experience of waking up to the truth of who we are that all spirituality aims at, all of it. Doesn't matter what the outward rituals are like. It doesn't matter what they call God, or if they have more than one God, or none. Doesn't matter what they postulate, right? It's the universal experience of our oneness with God that we're going for. This is for everyone. A Course in Miracles, as Jesus points out in the manual, is just one form of what he says is a universal course, which is this universal experience that we're going for. That we're using words, yes. Words are symbols. I mean, they're symbolic, but we use them here to communicate. I'm using them to communicate with you. I'm using this bizarre but really cool thing called a computer and the internet and this site that somebody made up called YouTube. We're using this to communicate with one another. And this device is a communication device. It's not who I am, and it is not who you are. We're awakening to this, and you can take as much time as you like. I don't expect anyone to run out and say, yes, you're absolutely correct. You don't have to agree with me. But what I want you to do, since you're watching and involved in this, is think about it. Take these ideas to heart and apply them. That's what this course is all about. The way we reach atonement is through forgiveness. That's how we do it. It's overlooking the error so we don't study the error with engaging in theology or engaging in consciousness or levels of consciousness. There are no levels at all, and there's no consciousness either, because in order to have consciousness, there is a subject and an object involved. One has to be conscious of something, which is viewed as outside oneself. It is the domain of the ego. Now, if you or someone else is not ready for that, so be it. I'm called to deliver this message for those who are, and those who are on the verge of it and thinking about it. Yeah, and for you all, thanks for tuning in, because, well, I want this to kick around in your mind. Yeah, that's what I want. I do. I want this to be something that you think about and doubt all you want, no problem. Yeah. Nothing wrong with asking questions. Now, Jesus goes on to point out here that the ego is going to ask a lot of questions along the way, such as how the separation happened. Well, it didn't. That's the answer. We've never been separate from our source. Can't be. It's impossible. Now, we could deny our oneness. That's what we do in the world. When we have a discussion and debate of any kind, it could be about theology. Hell, this is just an example. It could be about anything. It can be about politics. It can be about baseball. It can be about which year of a vintage of wine is better at a certain vineyard. Is the 18 or the 19 better? I mean, if you grew up in New Mexico like I did, it's red or green chili. Which is better? Really, the human mind comes up with millions of different ways to draw distinctions, and there are none. This course is very simple. It aims at atonement, the correction of perception, healing. That is its aim. Very simple. There's no need to complicate things further. Yet that's what we do. So here in this complicated situation, what do? Well, we engage in this series of practices that we call spirituality, in this discussion with ourselves, in our own internal workings. We go within where the answer is. Theology is just like any other shiny object, a creation of the ego, distraction. That's all. We live in a distracted world. I mean, who hasn't scrolled Facebook or Instagram or their social media feed, their news feed today already, at least once? There's a lot of distraction out there. So what I'm very grateful for is the fact that you're tuning in to this video, that you care about your own spirituality, which is, by the way, our spirituality. It's universal, isn't it? So I'm very grateful to you for your study and practice, and especially the practice. That's the most important part, because we can understand something conceptually and say, yeah, that makes sense. But putting it into practice is where the action is. That is where we make what we call progress on the path. That is where the action lies, is in our forgiveness. We're here to overlook error and set it aside. not study the error and not to engage in it. So when, not if, but when you catch yourself re-engaging in the error of separation, bring your attention back to forgiveness. Bring it back to the present moment where it belongs. Life can rightly be seen as a living, breathing, walking, waking meditation. When you notice that you're distracted and carted off, bring your mind back to the object of meditation, forgiveness. The unity, the oneness of the Son of God, right here in the present moment. That's it. All right, guys. So as we go forward here, we're going to be looking at some of the terminology, and Jesus will give us here an explanation of some of the ideas and central concepts here in A Course in Miracles. It's very helpful, very handy, but even more helpful still is your own forgiveness. This course is simple. The aim? Atonement, the correction of perception, healing. That's it. All right. We'll see you next time.